Good afternoon. My name is Denise Burgher. I'm a graduate student at the University of Delaware, where I am almost APD. Thank you so much for joining me here for the Religion Society Conference in Granada, Spain. The paper that I'm going to give this afternoon explores aspects of Madison Washington and what I call his embodiment of the divine in Frederick Douglass's text, Heroic Slave. In this paper, I make an argument that this text actually should be more accurately considered a work of Black theology. Frederick Douglass shaped popular 19th century literary forms, conversion narratives, sentimental texts, and spiritual biographies to create a new unique form I call Black abolitionist conversion narrative in his only work of fiction, Heroic Slave. This form relies heavily on Christian themes, literary conventions, and tropes, all of which are evident in Heroic Slave. In fact, it is impossible to miss the overt Christian references, language, and basic plot of the text. However, the religious aspects of Heroic Slave have received scant critical attention. It is, however, unlikely that Douglass, a man well accustomed to expertly tailoring his words to meet the demands of multiple occasions, did not deliberately deploy and strategically select these popular literary conventions and tropes, and most certainly, Douglass's 19th century readers were primed to recognize, understand, and respond to the religious aspects of this text. I suggest that in spite of his reputation as a secular humanist, Douglass's Christianity definitively informed Heroic Slave and perhaps much of his later work as well. In this paper, I foreground Douglass's religious life and analyze how he samples the form, functions, and narrative conventions of antebellum evangelical conversion narratives. I will demonstrate the ways that Douglass embraced and transcended white evangelical conversion narrative forms, used Christian tropes and symbols, and using fiction, he wrote an explication of Black theology. I argue that seriously considering Frederick Douglass's utilization of Christianity allows for a richer, more nuanced, and thicker reading of Heroic Slave. Madison Washington's enslaved body is the center of what initially seems to be an interpretation of the classic hero's quest. We know it, the hero's quest, an archetype very common in 19th century literature. The plot. A seemingly ordinary man of uncommon stock is wrongfully deprived. He takes a challenge of seeking restoration or vindication, embarks on a dangerous journey, undergoes a transformation, and saves the day. The biblical story of the redemptive Jesus aligns seamlessly with this dominant 19th century archetype of the classic hero and was therefore, I believe, the story with which Douglass's readers were quite familiar and why he chose it. But in the text, Douglass decenters both the stereotypical white male protagonist and rewrites the ideological frame of the hero's quest. Despite the feminization of Christ in the 19th century, Frederick Douglass depicts Madison Washington as an indisputably masculine hero, aligning him in place, print, and principle with Black theology's biblical Christ Jesus. This structural alteration of the ideological and subjective core of this convention allows Douglass to present his protagonist as the victorious Black Jesus. By default, Madison Washington aligns not only with the fathers of the nation, which is obvious in the text, but also with the son of a Black God, making Frederick Douglass, by design, one of the fathers of Black liberation theology. Theoretically, I build on Professor Gabriel Forman's theory of simultextuality, Black 19th century authors' simultaneous use of and reference to other works within the same text, and Professor John Ernest's chaos theory, which implicates the ways 19th century African American authors utilized multiple genres, forms, and citational practices in their texts. Douglass employed both simultextuality and elements of chaos theory in Heroic Slave. Without applying both simultextuality and chaos theory, it can seem, it being the text, disjointed, uneven, or even smack of plagiarism. As is true of so many other 19th century texts authored by Black authors, Heroic Slave must be seen through literate eyes. Frederick Douglass's transcendence of evangelical conversion narrative convention is bound up in the ways he used sentiment while scripting a historic fictional text which espouses the principles of 19th century Black theology. To hear the complete presentation, please search for my paper, which is entitled Madison Washington, the Embodied Divine. It'll be under my name, which is Denise G. Burgher. Thank you.